we're just going to start off with an introduction on who we are, what we do, and then we're going to talk about what this panel is going to be about. My name's Chris. I've been collecting monster toys since I was old enough to walk. I have many fond Christmases and birthdays of getting lots of cool monster action figures, lots of good memories. And I don't know, I just was one of those kids that always loved monsters. I felt like since I was a little bit different than the other kids, somehow in my mind, the monsters would kind of be on my side. Like I would work with the monsters somehow. I was never scared of them. I felt like more like they were my peers. So
rooted for the villains.
I did.
Yes.
I did. So and some of these toys are actually before my time, but due to garage sales and eBay and stuff, I was able to go back and kind of go back in time and get some of those pieces that I missed. So basically, that's my history.
My name is Andre, and I'm a huge toy collector. I collect like everything, like He-Man figures, Transformers, G.I. Joe, you name it. But monsters always held like a special place in my heart too. As a kid, I always loved those old black and white classic monster movies. I would watch Creature Feature. I grew up in Lakeland, Florida. Dr. Paul Beard, watching all that, and just kind of got me hooked on the whole thing. And of course, I wanted toys as a kid, and even to this day, I'm looking for those really cool monster toys to collect. And I mean, I've been getting these since like the late 70s. A lot of these are from our own personal collections that you see here. We've kept them, and even as kids, I can't believe some of the conditions we've kept them in.
Yeah, most of these are like, these are models I put together at a younger age. These were your vintage toys you played with as a kid. Some of those are my vintage ones. Those over there from '86, that was like an awesome monster Christmas '86. All those are, I remember seeing those under the tree, and it was just mind-blowing. Yeah, so a lot of these are actually ones that we've played with as kids, and we've kept them. And that's part of collecting too, is just keeping everything in really nice conditions and curating, displaying it, and kind of knowing what it's worth. So now we're going to go back onto how we met and what we currently do.
We have an internet show called Nerdgasm, which is on YouTube, and we review toys like monster toys, stuff like that, some of the latest things, and we also have some of the retro stuff too. We kind of go back and look at that. We're good friends with other like toy reviewers like Pixel Dan and Sean Long. We're friends with them. They kind of help us through this stuff, and I think this is like the first time we're actually going to do a panel on toys at the Spooky Empire.
Yeah, this
convention.
marks the very first toy panel at Spooky Empire, so I think that's pretty cool. And we appreciate, going into this for the first time, we're like, is anybody going to care? Is anybody going to come? Or, are there other toy collectors like us that are passionate about this stuff? So it's good to see you guys in the seats. So hopefully there'll be more toy panels to come in the future.
So what we want to do here is we're going to show you some of the stuff that's out there. Make sure that doesn't happen to you. Yeah. So if you have these things, we're telling you, okay, this is worth something. Clean it up. Make it look good.
Yeah.
Protect it. Other things we're going to show you, totally worthless.
Yeah, and we'll tell you if something's worthless. We'll be like, this is, does not hold its value, did not retain its value. But yeah, so this is to kind of empower you with that knowledge of value so you guys aren't ripped off, and just kind of educate you on what's out there if you already don't know, and to bring maybe people that have been thinking about collecting monster toys, show you what's out there and show you what you guys can collect if you're interested.
So we just dive right in?
Ready to start.
Start with, well, first of all, the Universal Monsters. I mean, this was the period of time between 1923 to 1960. In 1927, Universal Studios was losing all kinds of money. They were not drawing the money, but the monsters always brought the money. There was always a fan base for them, and you can see even to this day, they still make the toys, they still sell, so they're timeless.
After all these years, you still see. Everybody knows what Frankenstein looks like, the Frankenstein monster. Everybody knows Dracula, the Mummy. I mean, these guys are iconic, and they still sell, and they still hold up. And a lot of these, a lot of these have the likenesses of the actual actors, like Lon Chaney. We'll get into that a little bit later, too, about officially licensed stuff and non-licensed figures.
But the 60s, we started finally having toys.
Right.
But not quite action figures.
No, the action figures didn't exist yet. The action figures didn't exist until kind of the mid to late 60s with the first G.I. Joes, which were essentially dolls. But prior to that, we didn't have figures with movable parts. There was a company called Aurora that made models, and they had made planes and other figure models, but these old monster movies from the 30s and 40s that we're talking about, they weren't really meant for kids. But there was a big boom in like the 1950s and 60s where a lot of these local TV stations started buying up all the old Universal monsters to show in syndication. So you'd have all these Fright Night hosts that would play all the old monster films, and this is what the kids started watching. And by that point, you know, these movies were tame. I mean, even to those standards in the 1960s. So because of that, there was a need for merchandise. So Aurora actually made one of the first, actually the first monster model kit. They took a risk because they weren't sure if kids were going to like this or buy into it. So it was a very risky move at the time. And they made Frankenstein, which is the very first monster model kit right here. And these came out in the early 60s. And they started out, Frankenstein was the first one in 1961. Then they came out with The Mummy a year later. Then they made so many more. I mean, they made a Dracula, they made a Wolfman,
They made a Hunchback,
they made a Hunchback, they made the Creature. And they came in these tall boxes, like I said, by Aurora. And to spot an original box, the original boxes were these long boxes, and they have the actual Aurora logo on it, with the original 1963 date stamp. So that's kind of how to tell an original from not original. Like, for example, this is a later box. This was released in the later 90s. And a lot of these are found later on at Toys R Us stores. So even though they use the same James Mama artwork, the paintings that he did, they have a different logo. They have the official Universal Monsters logo here at the corner, which this one does not. And also it doesn't have the original 1963 date stamp on the bottom. Also, you can tell the bottom of the kits, if it's original or not, it'll have the 1960s copyright date. So that's, you know, if somebody's out there trying to sell you this as an original, you know what to look for. You know to check those dates, check those insignias on there, make sure it's the original Aurora stamp, and you'll be able to tell if they're trying to sell you off an original. Same with this. Other companies through the years kind of acquired these molds. We have Polar Lights, which makes model kits. Also Mobius models, they make model kits. They re-released the Dr. Jekyll as Mr. Hyde kit. Polar Lights released this Forgotten Prisoner, again, still applying the same James Bama painting and artwork, but not original kit. So of course, the original ones are going to be worth a lot more, especially the Phantom, because they never really re-released that Phantom past the early 1980s. So still, when these came out in 2000s, the Phantom was never re-released. So
we're going to see an ongoing theme with Phantom and Creature.
Phantom and Creature, you will find, are always the rarer figures. And are they the popular ones where they made less of them? I don't know. There's various reasons for that. So those went on and on and on. And as you can see, the Witch was actually the last kit they made. And as they made more and more of the kits, they got smaller, which was kind of an issue with me because I like all my stuff to match. And I like the scale to be the same, so it has that even aesthetic. But you can tell the Witch is so much smaller than the Mummy and the Forgotten Prisoner. I mean, the first 6 were all the same size. Then the Forgotten Prisoner got smaller, and then the Witch was like really shrunken down.
I blame cost cutting. That's what's
I think that's what it comes down to typically, is like you have the artists and the creative people want to make these beautiful things, and then as it goes through the red tape of the corporations, it gets filtered down to, look, this is what we can afford, and it's going to just be shrunken down. But yeah, they made 14 total models. Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy, Phantom, Creature, Hunchback, Dr. Jekyll. They even made a Godzilla and a King Kong model, too, the same company, Aurora, in the 60s, which I never bought that, because to me it didn't really fit.
It didn't really fit into the theme of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they made a guillotine, which literally was what it is. I mean, I don't know if they expected you to put your models under there and chop the model heads off. I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, I guess you could have done that if you didn't glue the head down. They also made, in '65, they made a Bride of Frankenstein, which again was when the scale started to shrink down a little more. Then they made the Salem Witch and the Forgotten Prisoner in '66, and that was the last of the classic monsters until they got re-released in the '90s. Yeah. So all these actually are custom painted and built by me. Every year I buy one and put one together around every Halloween. That's kind of been a tradition for me. And I've been doing those for about 10 years now.
And they have been re-releasing these lately, too. Right?
They have been re-released. I recently saw some of these kits available at local Toys R Us. And I think they retail for about $19.99, something like that, for a new kit. But like I said, as far as the big value goes, you want to look for the original Aurora 1963 to 66 kits. So look for those Aurora insignias, look for the 1963 dates on the boxes or molded on the bottom of the kits. And those will be the ones that are worth something, especially the Phantom. So check your attics, garages. If you got some of those hanging around, you're going to have some bits of gold there that you might be able to sell. So that's pretty much how it started with the classic monsters. Then in 1963, Marx Toys released their versions of the monsters, and it's amazing to see some of the similarities in some of these poses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these
from the models, but
yeah.
I like the paint app on these.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There was no paint app back in these, and a lot of times you will see these painted, but they are not actually factory painted. Some kid or hobbyist had taken these and painted them, and that, of course, decreases the value because that's not how they were originally, out of the factory. So pretty much when you get something graded or you're looking at value, if this doesn't look as close to it does when it left the factory, it's not going to be worth that much. I mean, you can restore some of these, like my Creature, for example. I got this on eBay for a steal. This one goes for like $100 for this one figure, $100, 1963. And he was covered in green paint. Some kid in the 60s painted him green.
And I can see it's still
Yeah,
on there.
there's still a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
But again, it goes to the whole thing. Like the Creature seems to be this short pad thing that everyone's going to want.
This is a rare one. This was also a rare one in the case of Marx Toys. Now, Marx Toys had been famous for their cowboys and Indians, their toy soldiers, their tanks and stuff, more militaristic type of toys. And then they went into the monster market, and these were a great hit, big hit. They also made a Mummy and a Wolfman, which I don't have here. And they made them only at first in 2 original colors. They made them in the teal blue color, which is what you see here, and then they made them in pumpkin orange. And the teal and the orange, those are the valuable ones. So if you look and you see that you have some of these that are teal, they're original. But not just the color, you've got to look at the base. You'll find 2 circles underneath. One is the copyright of the universal copyright on one circle underneath the base. The other will say Louis Marx Toys, and in Roman numerals, it'll say 1963. Some re-releases do not have these markings. However, they might be the same color. So the 2 things you got to remember if you're trying to see if you have the original Marx Monster Toys: the color, the teal blue or the pumpkin orange, and the 1963 date stamp. They did re-release some more orange ones later, but where the 1963 date stamp is supposed to be, there's just a blank bar. So that's your indicator that's not an original. People will try to pass them off as originals, but now you're imparted with that knowledge that that will not be an original. It's got to have the 63 date stamp along with the proper color. Also, when this company folded, when Louis Marx Toys folded, they sold their molds to Quaker Oats, the Quaker Oats company of all places. And they started cranking out toys, and then they sold their molds to a company in Mexico. So these started coming out in all colors. In the 1980s and 90s, these were you'd find them in red, in green, in purple, and black, and silver. The black and silver mostly made in Mexico. And again, they won't have the date stamps on the bottom, but people are under the false assumption that those are original figures from Marx, which they're not. So if you see any other colors besides teal or orange without the date stamp, don't pay the high prices for them. If you want to pay $5, $10 for them and paint them or do whatever you want with them, play with them for the kids, that's fine. But the originals, no. So that's pretty much with those. Moving on to 70s.
All right, let's move on to the 70s. So 1970s, one of the leaders of the toy revolution then was Mego.
Yeah.
They had the license to do DC, Marvel, Planet of the Apes, the Waltons, you name it. They had everything.
Any TV show from the 70s,
Yeah.
if you name it, they did it.
They had it. And what's really cool for me is you can have crossovers. You could have Superman and Spider-Man, and then, of course, Universal Monsters. So we have a representation here. Here's a mummy. It's actually a reproduction.
This
of
one's
it.
a reproduction,
Yeah.
but it looks exactly
But this
like
is what the mummy looked like from Mego back then, and I just thought it was kind of awful.
Yeah. Well, these were actually non-licensed. They did not have the license. Another company, which we're going to talk about in a minute,
Yeah.
this company had the official license for it, and they beat Mego out. And
They have a license. This is called a AHI. They ran from 1973 to 1976. They did 8-inch dolls like these, kind of like Mego did.
In the Mego style. They tried to capitalize on the popularity of Mego at the time.
This is with Azraq, Hamway International.
Hamway International.
Yeah. So then you have them. I mean, the likeness is a little bit better here. I mean, he sort of looks like Bela Lugosi. Again, the articulation is not as much as a Mego figure was. They're really primitive. Again, you got to remember this is like the 70s here that they made these things.
Yeah.
The funny story I have about these is I actually got these at Walt Disney World in, I think, like 79. We would go to the magic shop out over there on Main Street, and rather than wanting like the Mickey Mouse toys, I wanted monsters. I thought it was kind of funny that they're selling Universal monsters at a Disney theme park, and that's where I got them, and I kept them. Because that's kind of like all we really had to represent them back then.
Yeah, this was it. I mean, besides these, but like I said, these were hard to play with. You know, models, you're going to break them if you play with them. There was no articulation of these. So, yeah, this is when we start getting into the articulation of the figures. And the brilliant thing that Mego did was they used the same body pretty much for every figure they made. They just put a cloth overlay on top of it. They gave it cloth clothing. So Paul Walton would have the same body as Fozzie would, except they gave the Fonz thumbs up hands, so they didn't give them different hands. But most of the monsters have the glow-in-the-dark hands, and they made two types of bodies. Originally in '73, they made the Type 1 body, which actually was a little bit clunkier and had metal rivets instead of plastic rivets inside all of the joints. So that's how you can tell an older Type 1 had metal joints, like right here in the wrist, the knees, the ankles, and then a Type 2, which in the monsters cases, the Type 2 monsters are a little more rare. They have the plastic joints in lieu of the metal ones. So if you've got an original Mego, any of the original Mego monsters with plastic joints, those are going to be worth more, which is kind of cool. A little scarce because they were made towards the end of the run and didn't make a lot of them. But also with these, they made a Dracula, they made a Wolfman, they made a Frankenstein.
And actually they have the reproduction of those on the floor I saw in the vendor room, so you can see what they look like. The likenesses were very, very off, I felt.
You come on in, there's no problem. The likenesses are terrible. I'm not gonna lie to you. They're very primitive. They just really lacking on. They don't really look like the Universal monsters because they didn't have the official license, so they had to try to get away with it, without getting sued, but still make it close enough to where people would recognize it.
I mean, what shocked me about the AHI figures is the value they've gone up. I mean, I went to eBay, I saw $60 to $80 for each one of these guys.
These are worth more than the Megos, and I think it's because AHI was a smaller company. Therefore, they produced less of these. Therefore, there's not a lot of them around anymore. Whereas the Megos, even though these are worth, between 80 and between 65, 80 bucks for original ones each, those go for a lot more. Like I said, just because they made less of them, and I don't know. I guess it's the kitschiness or the vintage look of it that people really like that, or people actually had these as a kid and are trying to find them, and there's not a lot, so a lot of collectors are fighting over the availability of those. We should also mention that the heads on these were pretty much lifted from the Aurora molds. Like if you look at the mummy's head on this guy compared to the Aurora mummy, it's basically the same sculpt. Same with the Frankenstein. And I don't have the Wolfman, but same with the Dracula. These heads were literally lifted off that, and they used those molds to create the heads on the AHI, which is pretty crazy that they got away with it. Anything else? Oh yeah, they made a creature from this as well.
And again, hard to find.
Rare. As you can see, it's not here on our table. Neither of us have it.
I never saw it as a kid.
That thing goes for about $400 to $500 for one figure. Yeah, very impossible to find. Especially if you find that in a package, which is even more ridiculous because there wasn't a big collector market back in the 70s. Who thought to keep toys in packages? Who would really do that? You opened them up and you played with them, and the packages were trash, And you didn't recycle, so it's not like you could save them and recycle it back. There's no recycling back then. And they made two versions of that creature.
Yeah, so there's one with that kind of like a slender, hip build, and they referred to it as like the female creature.
Female creature, just because it had hips. and a very
Yeah.
skinny kind of.
They just tried to make him look
Yeah.
different, but then they
Yeah.
thought that didn't work, so they gave him the regular body.
So they did a redesign, and they gave him a thicker body for the creature. And I think the female's harder to find since that was
Yeah,
the
that was the first one, and they stopped production on that one.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can find a female creature,
Yeah.
wow, that's rare. And let's talk about rare. And these words are overused in the action figure market. Like you go on eBay and you'll type something in, just a random search, and people put rare in front of everything. Not everything is rare.
No.
Okay, you've got to really know what is rare. I go through the eBay stuff I'm looking at and just laugh sometimes. Like people really think they have something that is like gold, and it's not. It's garbage. But they still put rare.
I mean, it's stuff you couldn't
scarce.
give away.
No,
Yeah.
it's stuff you couldn't give away. But most of the stuff up here is right now is stuff that is hard to find. So again, creature, whether it be the female version with the bigger hips and the slimmer waist, that's rare, and the normal creature is rare. Mego never made a creature.
Mhm.
Never made a creature. Guess they couldn't get the clothing right for the creature. More complicated. So that's pretty much the 60s, 70s. I will mention a company called Lincoln International, also at the same time during the 70s, they were also competing with Mego, which was the biggest company at the time for toys.
And they were really similar to the AHI toys.
Very
Look at them.
similar.
I had to
very
look at the
similar.
comparison.
You have to really look close. I believe their mummy had blood on it, which was kind of crazy.
Even
that
more blood than that.
They put blood on it for back then. It's kind of surprising. Blooded up, gored up. But yeah, their mummy had blood. The Wolfman, though, is very similar. Like you'd really have to scrutinize that because it even has the same brown outfit with the little. That's literally a piece of string that they gave to tie around his waist. Which it's that's the way it was. All right, so let's move on to the 80s. Now the 80s is the stuff that's in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that I was.
This is when I was old enough to know about it, was the 80s. So,
Yeah. And you kept some of this stuff in package.
I can't believe I
don't know
actually
how
did
you
so,
did it.
So,
I
yeah,
think he's a time traveler. And knew
That's
this
it.
stuff was going to be worth money.
So Remco Toys stands for remote control. So
Yeah.
kind of weird they made monster figures, and when I saw them, like, finally, they've done them right. I mean, the Mummy alone, look at the Mummy compared to what we've had before. It's like, this is what I was waiting for as a kid.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted.
In just a 10-year time span, it's amazing how far better the sculpting became on these. I mean, just look at the Wolfman. That looks like Lon Chaney Jr. The Mummy looks good. The Frankenstein looks good. The Dracula is based on the Christopher Lee likeness.
That was
It's
definitely not a Lugosi,
unfortunately not Bela Lugosi. And you'll see that through time. Like, Marx didn't make a Dracula at all. They never made a Dracula. The Dracula for this doesn't look like Bela Lugosi. The Dracula
Sort of
for
does.
this, sort of. But I think there's been an issue with trying to get Bela Lugosi's rights to produce a lot of stuff, because it wasn't until like the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, that we finally had officially licensed Bela Lugosi
And
stuff.
there's a logo for it, too.
There's an
It
official
says
logo.
approved by Bela Lugosi.
His estate,
His estate.
his estate has to approve it, and I'm sure the rights for Bela Lugosi must be pretty up there. And I think that's why a lot of the toy companies just kind of steer away. But yeah, these are great, and again, similar to Mego, they had the same body style.
Yeah, they were
Notice
almost
that?
kind of like the same doll that they used for them. There was a little mechanism in the back where you would like push it and you'd kind of give each other a hug.
Yeah, they had hugging action. These are sweet little happy
Yeah.
monsters.
So,
So their arms were basically, let me try to roll his sleeve up. Their arms had kind of these wedges cut out of them, and there's a string inside.
that way it would have
of
some
them.
give.
So it would give,
Actually,
like this. So both arms would give. So let's see if he still works.
hey, there's
This
a
is
button
a-
in his back. You kind of push it in.
This is a over 30-year toy.
Have we done the action?
Like, no button stuff. There it goes.
Oh, there it goes. So yeah, they give each other hugs, and on the back of the package there's a little representation. See the Mummy giving Frankenstein a nice
See,
little
look
hug.
at that.
Warm and fuzzy in the 80s.
The monsters all work together. See, they're all a big happy family.
So there you have, this is Series 1 packaging. At the time they only had Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy, and of course the Monster Eyes. We'll take a look at that in a second.
Yeah, so Series 1, they released the first 4. And
Yeah.
this was 1980 as well, was it not?
Yes, this is 1980 that this came
Same
out.
company, Remco, they made the bigger ones and the smaller ones, which we'll get to
Take a look at that in a
in a
second.
minute. So they made those, and then Series 2, which were the more rare ones.
Yeah, they re-released all the original 4. Then of course the ever so rare creatures came with that.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved this toy because I mean, even by today's standard, it's like that sculpt is amazing.
The sculpt is great. I mean,
on his hands, his feet, and his head.
He had specialized sculpting on his hands, which was a big deal. The other guys, they had the same standard feet, maybe just different color, or they put shoes over them. But the other ones had the same hands. They actually broke the bank and spent the extra 10 cents and sculpted, actual creature hands and creature feet. Now, some people may laugh at his cloth costume.
Well, yeah, they all had the pajamas on.
They had pajamas on.
So, yeah.
But this one I had as a kid. And two of the worst enemies of toys are moms that throw your stuff out when you get too old, and dogs that chew your toys up. So it was the early 80s. I was still a little kid. This creature, which I still have yet to get again, was my favorite monster toy I had. I carried it everywhere. I took it to bed with me. When we went on vacation, it went with me. When I went to Grandma and Grandpa's house, it went with me. And then one day I came home from school and the creature was in pieces, chewed up by one of my dogs, and it was very, very devastating. I had a funeral for him, and I buried him in the backyard. And it was didn't kill the dog.
I would. That's right. Oh boy. So again, they came in these nice little, doll boxes and stuff like that, so you can display them. They also had a iron-on patch on there, so you can take a T-shirt and iron it on and buy them well used. Yeah. They were on T-shirts definitely as a kid.
So they're hard to find with the patches and tags. So if you can find these in box with the patches included, that'd be worth a lot.
But again, creature extremely hard to find. Again. I think that when my parents found them for me, we got them, we bought them, never saw them again. And then of course, there's another figure in the line, Phantom of the Opera.
That is
no one can find that one.
I can't. I've been collecting for 30 years at least since I could walk, and I've been trying to find that again. And I don't want to just lay down $400 for a loose one because that's what he goes for out of the box. In the box, $500-600 easy if the box is in good condition. And if it has the patch.
Yeah, the creature, like mint and box, like you're looking at $400 to $800 if you have it mint and patch.
$800 is the top.
Yeah, and that's like pristine condition.
That means, no bends, the tape is still sealed, the patch is in there, the bubble's clean. I'm using these inside terms, I'm taking for granted that but this is what we call like the bubble or the plastic screen of it. Sometimes you'll find yellowing or punching. If that's clear and flat, that's a good thing. We call these dog ears when they're bent over like that, so you don't want that. This one's pretty good. This one's pretty smooth on this side. And that's what we call mint. A lot of people, like on eBay, they overuse the word mint too. If something is loose and has paint on it, that's not mint, but people will label it as mint. No, mint means it is pristine.
Yeah. Not just not broken.
No, pristine, perfect condition. It looks like it is untouched by time, and it looks like it just came off the assembly line from the toy factory. That is mint.
And I think you found the Phantom on eBay. Was it $850?
And I want that Phantom so bad.
For that Remco Phantom of the Opera.
I wanted that Remco as a kid, and I never got it, and it still gnaws at me that I don't have it today. So I've got to get it before I die, so I can be buried with it. And buried with my creature. I've got to get my creature again. There's been moments where I've been at his house and I've seen that creature on display, and I've wanted just to knock the living daylights out of him and take it and run out his door because I'm like, where am I ever going to find that again? So yeah, I'm very jealous about you.
And of course, there was one other accessory. It was called the Monsterizer.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
And here it is. This is it. This was done by Remco right in 1980 in the first run. And still have the box for some reason.
There were some cardboard appliances on the side there, correct? On the ends, like right here, that's a cardboard.
Actually, no, it's a sticker.
It's a sticker.
It's a sticker. It's like it's all plastic with a sticker. Okay. And mine doesn't really work anymore. But when you would like turn this, you'd have this little cranking sound.
So he's on a little treadmill.
This would come up, and then you would. It was battery operated. It took a 9-volt battery.
Okay.
And then this light would just kind of come on, and make these little electrocution sounds and stuff like that, like you saw in the light.
How many kids got electrocuted on that? Look at all those wires hanging up. I know. Safety standards were much lower back then. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And the point of that was to light up your monsters. So
because they all glowed in the dark, and this the light was kind of like right in your face. Mm-hmm. So you'd hit that button, you make the noise, shoot that light right in your face, and if it's in a dark room, all of a sudden your face is glowing.
Yeah.
So that was the effect that they wanted with these.
It's pretty cool.
These would glow on the side also. And that was about it. But
I remember the
Mentioned
TV.
it.
I remember the TV commercial for that.
The commercial,
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
TV, yeah, I remember seeing
That was
that,
awesome.
asking people about it all the time.
That stuff sticks with you. A lot of the advertising stuff. They did a good job of.
Especially back in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
when Ronald Reagan did the deregulation, it's like the toy companies went nuts. They were
That's-
like, oh, commercials, TV shows, let's just put this out
Yeah,
there.
lifting that law really helped get a lot of product out there. Show them the box of that as well, and I just love the
so
photos
typical.
on the side.
You know, they're the all out bringing Frankenstein to life, the entire
Yeah.
series one. They just, I guess that's what they do back then. They all kind of team up and have a powwow. And,
They lived all
"No,
together.
let's bring Frankenstein to life.
In my mind as a kid, all the monsters got along. They were a big team. Dracula was the boss. Phantom was like the lieutenant, second in command. So when Dracula had to go fly out,
Frankenstein monster was like the muscle.
Frankenstein was just the muscle man. Wolfman was kind of hard to control.
Yeah.
Mummy was
Loose
just
cannon.
asleep all the time. but yeah, they all worked
That was
together.
their ranks there.
Yeah, those were the ranks. So
Also from Remco,
Yeah.
not only did we have like these large, we also had like some smaller ones too. They were 3 3/4 inch figures. We have them in the front.
Yeah, and they changed the scale based on the popularity of the Star Wars figures at the time, because up to 78, 79, when Star Wars figures came out, figures were big. You know, they were the 8-inch scale.
Or the 12-inch,
They were the
yeah.
12-inch scale. They were huge. They're almost doll-like. And then here comes Star Wars. Here comes Hasbro Kenner, and they revolutionized the action figure industry. You know, they decided, no, we're going to make them small.
Yeah.
And we're going to make them plastic with no cloth, really, appliances, aside from a couple capes. But
Yeah.
most of the early capes are
Vinyl capes, which you see on these, Dracula and the Phantom. They
Yeah.
have vinyl
They
capes,
gave the vinyl
just like a
capes.
Darth Vader figure would back then.
Correct.
And all those figures have 5 points of articulation, which is what a Star Wars figure
Yeah.
had back then.
So if you put a vintage Star Wars figure next to those Remco monsters, they'd be the same exact scale.
Exactly. So you can have Darth Vader and Dracula teaming up. Yeah, that's what I would like to do with my toys, the scale.
It'd be hard for Dracula because he wouldn't be able to find a bite point because
Oh,
Vader's
that's
got all
true.
that armor on. You know, he'd have to take off the armor and that helmet
Yep.
to be able to get to him.
So,
These are things we think about.
yeah, exactly.
So they made those, and they made a creature. Again, the creature was kind of hard to
And
find.
once again, yeah, the creature and the Phantom are the hardest ones to find. Mint on code, I think the creature goes for about $80 to $100.
Yeah,
Phantom, 55 to 75.
yeah.
The other ones, kind of all over the place, 25 to 50
Yeah,
for the other ones.
depending on the condition and the card. Because they made, for those small Remco ones, they made 3 different package designs. They were on a normal cardboard blister card. When they first came out, they didn't have the glow-in-the-dark feature, the small ones. They were just standard. Like, you can see how dark my creature is there. He's like a very dark green. Later on, they released them all with glow-in-the-dark paint. And the creature was completely molded in a lighter, more like a lime green that glowed in the dark. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the original dark one is harder to find because he was the earlier one.
He is definitely the first release. I don't know if they had like a smaller run for
Yeah.
the glow-in-the-dark versions.
I would say they did because they went on longer with the glow versions, and then they really tried to upsell that glow feature because the package design changed a little bit. First, you had the standard package design, which is
Well, just the face.
the photo of the
face
classic
of it,
face.
yeah.
Like the Phantom had just a big, graphic of Lon Chaney's face on the package, and then as they went on to glow, they had around the side of the figure's bubble, they had like this glowing burst
Oh, okay.
to show that it glowed. And then for the third version of the packaging, they had the burst along with another burst at the top that says glows in the dark. So they're really trying to sell that glow in the dark feature. It should also be noted that for the 3 3/4 Remco monsters, they made 2 playsets for them. They made a
It was a
monsterizer,
monsterizer, a smaller one. of
just
these.
like that, just a smaller scale, so that you could put your little monsters in there and get revitalized, charged up, and glow in the dark. And then they had this little monster play case, and you would put them in there. It was kind of like a vinyl. It was basically cardboard, laminated cardboard. It's what it was, very cheap. But it was cool because you had a place that would accommodate all your monsters in one little place, and it was a little carrying case too.
Wow.
It had a little handle on there. So,
saw that.
Dracula had his coffin. I had that as a kid. Dracula had his coffin. The Mummy had his sarcophagus. Frankenstein had his lab table. And it was all cardboard, so that's kind of hard to find intact.
Okay.
All right, now let's finish up the 80s, and then we'll move on to the other
One last
decades.
line.
Yeah. So there's another line in the 80s that came out in 1986, and as you can see, it's more of a clunkier scale. These were made by a company called Imperial in '86, and they didn't really make too much other than those. And I remember those were available at Toys R Us, and they came packaged in 2 ways. They were kind of thrown in bins in the store with just a little tag around their neck, and then they also came in individual blister cards. Only 3 points of articulation on those, the head and the 2 arms. And like I said, they're very clunky. I remember hating the mummy because I'm like, the mummy's really fat. Why is that mummy so fat? He's supposed to be like a starving, rotting corpse. What has he been eating while he's been away? The Wolfman, his pose is kind of weird. I don't like the way his claws are, and he's kind of got pigeon-toed feet, which I really don't get. So even as a kid, I was kind of picky with those. I did like the Frankenstein because he was huge, and he's got more of the Glenn Strange Frankenstein look on him rather than the Bela Lugosi one. Boris Karloff, rather. And I really do like the face sculpt on that Dracula. Because look at the face sculpt on that. Did you ever have these on, Jay?
I didn't have those, no.
Did anybody have those? No, they're kind of hard. That's kind of hard to find. Like I said, I only ever saw them at Toys R Us back in the 80s. But the Bela Lugosi looks pretty good. I mean, to those standards, to 80s standards. Okay, so
I was fine with my Glemcos.
you were happy with those.
But
Okay.
I got those like, oh, fulfilled.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. I might have a creature by the end of the day. We'll see. If that poison kicks in his coffee. Okay, now we're going to do a little trivia thing. We have prizes.
Yes.
So we're going to ask some questions. You want me to take care of the trivia stuff, and then you can set up for the next couple decades?
Okay.
Decades. Because there's lots of monster stuff out there. This is really just a sample of what we feel are some of the better ones. So I'm going to ask a few questions. We got some prizes furnished from our friends at Diamond Select Toys. They're really cool and gave us some prizes to give out, which was great. And the toys that we're going to give out, we're also going to feature at the end of this panel too. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions. Are there any kids in the audience? Because I have like something I want to give a kid. You have a kid? Okay. Where is my prize box? This is something fun. These are, bless you. These are our friend and artist Joe Simcoe. He made, these are great. He makes a lot of posters. He's been to Spooky before, and he's made a lot of serial killer cards. And they're basically kind of like Garbage Pail Kids, if you guys remember those, kind of like wacky packages back in the day. So he made his own line of like creepy cereal, which is great. So trivia question for a kid. What was the first model kit released in 1961? What was the very first model kit? We discussed it at the beginning of the panel.
Should have won them. There's a quiz.
Yeah, it's on the edge of the table. You can see it. Okay, I'm trying to see. You have kids. Frankenstein. That's right. So hopefully these aren't too terrifying for your children. If not, I'm not responsible for them. You can open them up and censor if you need to now. Yeah, early 2000s. Do you want me to do that? Can you do the trivia?
All right, I'll do one trivia thing. Okay. All right, we have here. Okay, trivia question number 2. In the 1970s, who actually made these 8-inch scale figures?
Mego.
Mego. And there's one other one. 2-point question.
Imperials?
AHI.
AHI.
That's it, AHI. You got it.
Let's see. You win from Diamond Select Toys a Creature from the Black Lagoon bank, or is it? It's a bank and bust. And this was furnished. This is a $24.99 value, so we got that for free. So give that. And also, we're going to take pictures of you with the prizes. So if anybody has a problem with that, please don't ask questions, because this is just to show the company that we indeed gave away the prizes. So we can keep it for ourselves, and it's to help promote them on their Facebook page and stuff. And we'll put it on our Facebook page as well, which is the Nerdgasm Facebook page. So, you want me to take a picture?
Yeah.
The Christian Wolfman took a dive there.
Yeah.
We'll get them. Okay. Worthless. Yeah. Just get one of me handing it to you here.
Oh, she got up.
There we go.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, drag it out, because I got to set a lot of stuff.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So as we covered like this whole era of monster figures, we've mentioned with all these classic figures, there's been 2 that have been the short pack that we just cannot seem to find anywhere. Okay. That's actually the hand of the back went up first. So. Right. Fan of the Opera, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yes, that's.
time for a prize already?
Yeah, I'll take it. Just stretch it. Oh, sorry.
All right. Well, this is pretty cool. This is from McFarlane Toys. Anybody like The Walking Dead? Has anybody heard of that show? I don't know. This is from the comic series from McFarlane Toys. This is the Governor action figure from the comics.
Yes, this is the Governor Philip Blake, not quite the David Morrissey version from the TV series, but yes, exactly. So it actually has the alternate head where he can be with it without the eye patch. There you go.
Chris, on your show, do you talk about like McFarlane figures and different stuff?
We are about to roll out a vintage series. We do current stuff right now, but we're going to have a whole separate show, and it's going to be called Nerdgasm Throwback, and we're going to just arbitrarily pick something out of the vault and talk about vintage toys and do episodes on those as well. Because a lot of the younger viewers, they don't really know about this stuff, so we kind of want to get that out there.
And what was weird is we were actually at the PowerCon a couple weeks ago over in California, and some small kids, I mean, they had to be 10 years old, they were asking about those vintage He-Man figures and stuff like that. We thought it was just kind of fascinating that they want to know about that. And I'm like,
Yeah, how are they?
I guess so, because I mean, we have like all the new re-releases, like the 80s is like, they always come back with stuff. I mean, Thundercats comes back, He-Man comes back, G.I. Joe, Transformers, but they want to know about the original versions of them, and we were fascinated by that, and so like, wow, maybe there is a market to like talk about this stuff.
Yeah, because the 80s kids are having parents now, and they're forcing their lives on them, I guess. They're like, you will like this stuff. I don't like Thundercats, I want to play video games. Too bad, you're liking it. I just want to live vicariously through them, I guess. So I'm setting up some 90s stuff right now. Can you guys hear me if I talk this way? Yeah. I see you can hog that microphone. So we're setting up some 90s stuff right now. These were made by McFarlane Toys in the early 90s, and it was kind of McFarlane's take on the monsters, which was kind of cool. And I remember seeing the prototype pictures for these before they came out. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. You're going to have a Phantom with his organ, which is really cool, because up to that point, any Phantom figure had not had any type of accessory like an organ or anything.
And one thing you'll notice about the McFarlane figures is, other than the detail that you know that he puts into them, they were very twisted, very dark versions of them.
Very different. They kind of stray a little further from the classic versions we know, but again, McFarlane was the first company in the early 90s to really revolutionize the action figure industry. Up to this point, there wasn't this super uber sculpting, there wasn't these very detailed paint apps. He was the first to do all this, and he set the bar higher, and that's kind of why we have these really detailed toys now, because everybody had to come up to that point or people weren't going to accept it, people weren't going to buy it. You know, they were kind of staying in the past. So the paint apps on these were like, they looked like hand painted, like models. So basically what he made was highly detailed, articulated models, which was a great idea. And they were successful at the time, but like a lot of stuff in the 90s, it was overproduced. So Andre, do you have some of the values on these?
Yeah, I looked those things up. I mean, they retail for about $10 when you found them at Toys R Us or Walmart. And if you go on eBay now, you can find them for $10 to $15. So the McFarlane toys, the monsters, they really didn't go anywhere. So I would not pay more than $15 for these. So
without the box.
without the box, normally that's a $10 price point.
What if they're still intact?
Mint and package, I found like 15. It did not go up much at all. So that's what I'm saying. It's like
so
that
not
was,
everything is worth a lot. So if you see people saying, "Oh, this is rare," these McFarlane things, no, not really. And I mean, like with everything, they're going to be worth more in the box. And I've seen some of these on the floor. And if you like the style, and
it was just an oversaturation of those. That's what happened.
that's what happened with everything in the 90s. Not a lot of 90s toys are worth much. The economy was great. It was all about produce. Not so much on the quality, just get it out there. It was the same with cars. Like, look at 90s cars, they're all crap. Nobody wants a 90s Mustang. Have you seen those things? But, so that's McFarlane. Here we go. Now, remember I was telling you about the Marx figures earlier that came out in the 60s? Well, this company in 1991 re-released them. This is one of the many companies that re-released them. So here you have a Phantom and a Hunchback, the same mold as the original 63 ones I showed you earlier. However, they're molded in this glow-in-the-dark color. So what would you do? You'd look on the bottom, blank marking. So you've got no 63, no Mark's Toys, nothing. Okay, not even a, well, this one does have a 91 date. But again, these are not the orange, these are not the teal, they don't have 63, that's how you know these aren't original. And again, re-released in the 90s. What else? Also, actually 97 was a pretty good year for monster toys because what happened was the post office released a commemorative set of monster stamps. You guys remember those?
Oh, yeah.
In 97? Yeah, they made the Mummy, Wolfman, and Frankenstein. They made those 3 stamps, and they looked really good. And they had the official likenesses of Lon Chaney and Boris Karloff on them, which is really cool. So to kind of commemorate that, a lot of the toy companies, including Hasbro, produced figures in conjunction with that stamp offer. And they made a 3-pack of about, what were those, Andre, like 12 inches?
Yes.
12-inch dolls, similar to the older 70s stuff we were showing, but bigger. They had the cloth clothing. And the face sculpts were good. They actually had the official license for those characters. So the face sculpts looked good, but the bodies were almost too thin. And they had the cloth clothing, which made them look not so good. And again, their value varies. Like some of those, I saw a couple on the floor, like the Frankenstein and the Bride. I saw them for going for $60. That's way overpriced.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't pay more than 20 or 30 for those. And I think they retailed for about 15 in 1997, right? Did they make 12, 99, $15 around that? So again, I wouldn't pay more than that for those. Now, the first 3 they made came in a box set, and when you opened up the flap of the box set, it was in a big window box. They showed all the 3 replicas of the 3 stamps in there, which was pretty cool. So if I had to get anything, I guess I'd get the box set first. So that was that. Moving on to these.
These are from Jack's Pacific. Now, I know them as making wrestling toys, so I think it's kind of funny that they actually did 6-inch scale Hulu toys, which were really cool. I mean, they were, again, the 6-inch scale, which I really preferred, and they all had bases. It was really cool. This is the Bride of Frankenstein base, and he would actually, I guess, try to break out of his chains. I don't really have it. There we go. It's better than that one here.
They also made each of these in a black and white version. So this is how they all came packaged in a window box like this, with a tab behind it so you could kind of test out the action feature. The color ones came first, correct?
Yeah. Then came the black and white
Then came
versions.
the black and white version.
And one thing I was going to show too, here's like a box here, and on the bottom there's actually a logo from the Bela Lugosi family to actually authorize them and approve the
Correct.
likeness of him on these figures.
Yes, it's got, well, this one's a little covered, but that logo means it's official. This toy company has paid his estate to use his likeness and use his rights, and they're getting their percentage. And that's how you know it's official. Again, here's the black and white Dracula, but they kind of cheaped out and gave him a red cape, which should be white.
If it was black and white, it'd be grayish.
Yeah, but they obviously used the same cape from that, so
Yeah.
that was a little bit of a disappointment. But the face sculpt on these are pretty good for the time.
Yeah.
The scale is kind of, what's the scale on these? Are these 6 inches?
These are 6-inch scale,
Yeah.
most definitely.
They just look a little chunkier than I'm used to. But,
Yeah.
we're,
But,
fine. We're very picky with our scale and toys. When they don't match up, it just doesn't sit well with us.
Values on these did not go up too much. You can find them for about $20 to $30 each.
Right.
I think that when they retailed, they were like $15 when they came out.
Yeah.
So-
They don't really hold their value. Some of the black and white ones might go for a little more.
Maybe a little bit more, but I think these
because-
were KB Toys exclusives.
Yeah, KB
I didn't see them
toys.
anywhere else but there.
Right. So a lot of these were marked down at the time, towards the end, and you can get a good deal on these. Let's finish up 90s. We've got to do current because we only have about 13
I know.
minutes.
Okay, and also Toy Biz in the Marvel Legends line.
Biz.
Yes, we all know Toy Biz.
Yeah.
Again, mostly monsters, figures, and comic book things. But here's their way of kind of going into the monster realm. This is like a monster 4-pack. And it's not quite, the monsters we know. I mean, they did like comic book versions of the Frankenstein monster and Dracula based on the Gene Colan artwork. And then instead of the Wolfman, it's Werewolf by Night, which was a Mike Krug comic from the 1970s. And instead of like Mummy, they have the Zombie, which is another Marvel horror character from the 1970s.
And I did see one of these on the floor.
Yeah, and it's accurate to $100 on the floor, and I actually saw it on eBay for $100.
Yeah.
So
And this retailed for how much?
I think I got for like 30.
30 bucks
35,
originally.
35,
now
yeah.
it's holding its value at 100. So it's
So
pretty
there
good.
was definitely a market for that
Yeah.
that pack.
because it appeals to Marvel Comics fans, and horror fans. So you're getting both of those groups interested. Okay, let's move on to the current now.
Okay, so more current stuff here.
The current stuff, Diamond Select Toys is really the best, accurate, best sculpted, best articulated figures out there. Right?
Diamond Select keeps putting out stuff. It's kind of cool, but they keep outdoing themselves every time. So these are like some of the current ones that they've done. Toys R Us had these in more of a normal, smaller packages. These are like the deluxe versions.
Yeah, these ones retailed for, they made two versions of everything. They made the deluxe version, which usually came with an extra figure or accessory. In this case,
Yes.
which both of these are here,
We
by
have
the way.
the victim in this
And
one.
you can see they're autographed.
It so happens to be autographed by Rico Adams and Julie Adams.
Perfect thing to get
From
autographed.
earlier today.
But yeah, so they came with a little bit of a different paint job and an extra accessory. And these retailed for what, 25?
Yeah, they were like 25, yeah.
And then they made the standard versions, which you could find at a Toys R Us store for what, between 10, 15?
Yeah, 10 or 15.
It varies depending on your store. But right now, the new series was only going for $12.99, which I thought was nice. Because last year they were $15.99, so it went down. Which never happens.
That's a good thing.
Usually
That's a
goes
good
up.
thing.
Usually goes up.
I mean, other than the creature, this is the other like glaring like difference is you had a mummy before.
Yeah, and this thing is heavy. This
It weighs a
about,
ton
this weighs
because
about 5 pounds.
he actually comes with, as you can see, the sarcophagus, and that was like an amazing feature that they
It's
had
all
on this
weight.
one.
Right.
So again, this was like 25 when that came out.
The mummy in this was not articulated, so what people were doing is buying the standard mummy from Diamond
Yeah, you could
Select
swap his arms out.
and putting him in this one. That way you had a movable arm mummy. Let's show them the newest stuff because I've got some more prizes to give away, and I want to
Okay.
have at least a few minutes for final Q&A.
Gotcha.
So these just came out, what, like a week, couple weeks?
Within the month, yeah.
So this is the newest wave of these. What is this, Series 4 now? I believe it's Series 4.
I believe so.
And
Yeah.
this is the deluxe Hunchback based on Lon Chaney's performance in the late 20s, like 27 film. So we're going to give this away to one of you guys. This is a $25 value. Go ahead and shoot a trivia question out for me. Something that we just talked about here.
Oh boy. Okay. Okay. The Jack Specific Monsters line, that was an exclusive to what chain? Right in the middle.
His
Yep.
hand was up first.
KB Toys?
KB
Correct.
Toys, that's it. You got it.
Lucky winner!
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
Unfortunately, KB Toys is no longer with us because they had tons of exclusives. I know they had that, the Treasure Island line, all that stuff.
Get a picture of that gentleman, and I'll move on to the next trivia question.
No, thank you for that, that's for sure.
All right, I got you.
Can you stay up?
Yep.
I want Diamond Select coming after me.
We got it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next prize we have, furnished by Diamond Select. This is really cool too. This is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Look at that, look how cool that is. Boris Karloff played him, which is really cool. This is the first time they've ever made an action figure of this guy too. So it's debut figure. They made a model of him in the 60s, but this is the first action figure.
If you find this at Toys R Us, a standard version, it's just Mr. Hyde. So
Yeah.
there's not an alternate head or anything. You just buy Mr. Hyde, but that's why I say go with this one. You get, the transformation.
This is the deluxe one. You can
Is that
turn
a
him.
royalty item to the family? Is that, you said with Boris Karloff?
Does it have the seal on it? It's got the Cheney seal.
There's a Cheney logo on here, but not a color.
No, I don't see a Karloff seal on it, which is unusual, because typically they do have to.
So the Cheney family,
Yeah,
get the royalty.
there was definitely a Cheney, LonCheney.com approval on it.
Cool. All right. So trivia question for these. This will be easy. What company in the '90s produced these figures right here? Your hand was up.
McFarland?
McFarlane. All right.
Farland Toys.
Give that man his toy and take a nice picture of him.
Okay.
Guys are cleaning up. We get a picture of this.
There.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, because I know you won the other one, so that was nice. I think that's all our prizes. But I know, but it was pretty cool that they gave us anything at all. I emailed like 10 toy companies, and Diamond Select was the only one that cared enough about horror fans to really support us and you guys. So make sure you check them out on Facebook and
Twitter.
And we don't say they're the best because they gave us stuff. It's like, no, really, look at the toys.
Yeah, if you look at the detail compared to other stuff.
Everything, it's amazing what they can do with these.
All right, we got 7 minutes left. I want to open it up to Q&A. So whoever has their hand up. Yes, sir?
I bought a lot of small soldier stuff. When the movie came out, I bought like about $1,000 worth of items, the 12-inch figures, Archer, Chip.
Yeah.
And I've seen on eBay where they actually been going for like $250 selling for it. Do you know anything about those collections?
I know they did make a lot of that stuff. I don't remember seeing a lot of those at retail.
It kind of came and went. I mean, the movie was not that big of a hit or anything. It really stayed, so the toy companies just kind of pulled them off. So
I know when that movie where Avatar came out, they based that character Chip off the. So they said they were infringing on them. So it kind of
Could be. Sometimes when there's copyright issues, figures will be pulled off the shelves, and that'll increase their value because basically that's a stopping point. You can't buy them anymore. So yeah, hang on to those because if they're worth this much now, the value is just going to increase. Yeah, sir in the black shirt. Yeah.
How much of, like on the McFarlane toys, a lot of times throughout the series there'll be different paint variations on them?
Correct. Like the Hunchback here, he had a different head. There are 2 versions of his head. This one is a more grotesque one. The other one looked more human.
Now, does that make a big difference?
You know, it depends. For something that's not really valuable to begin with, like these, you can get these for like $10. A variation like that wouldn't make a big difference. But however, when we're talking about a variation with the AHI ones, like those 2 creatures we were talking about, the female male creature, yes. So it all depends on the particular value that will increase the variation and how many few, like which one was made less of, you know. So that would definitely depend. Yes, sir.
In the 80s, early 80s, I had bendable figures.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes, we were.
Those were glow in the dark, I think.
Yeah, we were talking about those. We were talking about those because
there was some bendy and some Webu figures. Those went up in value too. I just didn't have any to like show. Because I actually have some of those old like Webu figures that AHI later Vix remade.
the same company that we were
But yeah,
showing the
those
70s
are up
ones.
there.
Yeah. So
those
those-
went up.
Not exactly. Were they like the 80s or the 70s?
Well, AHI,
Well, that was it was like late 70s.
Late 70s.
I would say late 70s.
and then Remco, which was a part of the AHI, released monster stuff in the 80s. So I believe that was 79. So yeah, hang on to those. Those are worth something. Let me try somebody else first. Yes, sir. Spooky Empire shirt.
Just a little note, you mentioned about the Bela Lugosi license.
Uh-huh.
I believe it was a local person here who had a very small toy company for a while.
Charlie Flatt. Charlie Flatt was his name, and he was actually I met him. I'm a huge fan of his work. He actually started doing custom-made figures of his own on the side as a hobby, and he would enter them in an old magazine called Action Figure Digest, and they would feature his work a lot. It's beautifully sculpted stuff, and in fact, I met Charlie Flatt. Was it last year at Spooky or Mayhem?
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I met Mr. Charlie Flatt, and
At the Wyndham,
and I
yes.
brought a magazine with his stuff on the cover, and it was like meeting a rock star for me because I really admire his work and sculpt. But yes, you're correct. He had a company. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. It was called Flat World, and he produced the very first officially licensed Bela Lugosi Dracula figure. So for a small-time guy in a small business to be able to accomplish that was pretty cool. So yes, good thought on that. Yes, sir, in the back.
Did you get into any of the Sanchez stuff?
I have some, but because of limited time, we had to skip it, unfortunately. But if you want to come over and look at some on your way out, I'll show you. I've got it in a bin here. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Your first set of models, the black and blue.
The models, yeah.
Are they worth anything together, or would you just buy them in the box?
That depends. I mean, unassembled in the box, definitely worth a lot more. You know, painted, depending on the quality of the paint, somebody might want to buy them. If it's an original kit that is already put together, maybe somebody would take that and repaint it. But typically, in the box, unassembled, still on the plastic sprues, that's the best way to get them as far as high value goes. Any other questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
The female version of the creature like the thing you were talking about?
Yeah.
I remember I didn't have it long at all, the feet were right on.
Again.
I played with years no feet.
Yeah, again, with some of those lesser quality figures made in the 70s, there was basically no quality control. So just little plastic pins, that's all that hold their feet in. Yeah. Any other questions?
We gotta get going.
Yeah, we gotta go. We gotta shut down. Thank you guys. Please like us on Facebook. Watch our episodes on YouTube. It's Nerdgasm Central. And be sure to check out Diamond Select stuff.
thought they did a good job of this. Yeah, of course.